The skill you spent a decade building already has a replacement date. October 15, 2024. A conference room on the third floor of an insurance office in Cleveland, Ohio. Marcus Webb walks in carrying a coffee he won't finish. He has worked here for 19 years. His laminated badge has edges worn smooth from 10,000 swipes. He processes policy data, cross-references claim numbers, formats quarterly reports for branch managers in 6 states. His desk has a framed photo of his daughter's college graduation, paid for with the salary this skill provides. His annual reviews use the same words every year: meticulous, dependable, consistent. This morning, the department head has a laptop open and a software demo on screen. The room is quiet. The tool takes a dataset that Marcus would spend a full morning organizing, the same task he has performed roughly 4,700 times across his career, and produces the completed report in 9 seconds. Same formatting, same cross-references, same output. Nobody in the room looks at him. 19 years, 9 seconds. Marcus doesn't get fired that week. That would be simpler. Instead, his role is quietly redefined. His core tasks go to the software. He is offered a lateral transfer to a department he's never worked in, reporting to a manager 10 years younger, doing work he was never trained for, same salary. But it feels like charity now. Within 6 months, he resigns. Not because he was pushed out, because the thing he was best at, the thing that paid for his mortgage and his daughter's degree and 19 years of stability, no longer requires a person. This is not a story about Marcus Webb. This is a story about the 5 categories of human skill that technology kills first during every major shift. They are the same 5 categories, in the same order. Every single time. This is Last Shift, where we document what happens when the work disappears. And what's about to disappear has a pattern that goes back 250 years. 5. That's the number. 5 zones, not 5 random skills. 5 structural categories that collapse in sequence every time a foundational technology changes how work gets done. We are not going to list them yet. First, you need to understand why the list exists at all, because the story most people carry about technology and jobs is wrong, and it is wrong in a way that makes them feel safe when they should not be. Most people believe technology eliminates simple work first. Low skill, physical, repetitive, the assembly line, the factory floor, the checkout counter. That is the version of automation that gets taught in schools and repeated in opinion columns. It lets people with office jobs, with degrees, with years of specialized training believe they are protected. That automation is something that happens to other people. That's not how it works. Technology does not target simplicity. It targets describability. Any task that can be broken into steps, documented in a manual, measured by a metric, and evaluated by an output is a task already translated into the only language a machine needs. Whether that task is performed by a hand or a brain makes no structural difference. What matters is whether the work can be written down as a process. If it can, it will be automated, not eventually, in sequence, in the same 5 zones. Every time. There is one zone on this list that most people would swear is safe, creative, irreplaceable. It is the 5th. We will get there. The first skill zone that dies is always the same: precision repetition. This is the skill of doing the same thing, correctly over and over without deviation. It is the skill most people believe makes them irreplaceable. They were told from childhood that practice makes perfect, that consistency equals value. Entire careers exist because someone does not make mistakes. Data entry, bookkeeping, quality control, claims processing, filing, formatting. Every office in every city has someone whose primary value is consistency. But consistency is a machine instruction. In 1450, Gutenberg did not invent writing. He invented a device that could reproduce text with perfect consistency, page after page, without the errors that human copyists introduced after hours of fatigue. Within 50 years, the profession of hand-copying manuscripts, a role that had existed for over 1,000 years across tens of thousands of trained scribes, simply ended. The scribes were not unskilled. Their skill was precision repetition. The press could do it without sleeping, without wages, and without variation. The pattern repeated in the 1940s. During World War II, the United States military employed thousands of human computers. Not machines, people. Mostly women with mathematics degrees. Their job was to calculate ballistic firing tables, census data, and differential equations by hand. They were fast, accurate, and essential to the war effort. Then ENIAC arrived in 1946. 5,000 editions per second. The human computers, several with PhDs, were reassigned within months. Within a decade, the profession no longer existed. Your skill doesn't get replaced because it's low value. It gets replaced because it's high consistency. In 2025, Klarna, the European payments company, announced that a single AI chatbot was handling the work of 853 full-time customer service agents. The company's workforce dropped from 7,000 to 3,000 in 3 years. Projections put it below 2,000 by 2030. Paycom, an American payroll company, laid off over 500 employees in October 2025, targeting what they called non-client-facing roles that have been automated. IBM disclosed plans to replace roughly 30% of its back-office workforce with AI, 7,800 positions. Hundreds of HR employees had already been replaced by January 2026. If your performance review praises you for being accurate, consistent, and reliable, understand what that means structurally. Your skill can be described in a flowchart. Anything described in a flowchart is already being converted into software. That is not a prediction. That is the function of the flowchart. The second skill zone feels like the opposite of repetition, but it dies by the same mechanism: information gatekeeping. For centuries, this was the safest position a person could hold. Doctors knew medicine, lawyers knew law, brokers knew markets, travel agents knew routes and prices that the public could not access. The value proposition was simple: you had information others needed. The harder it was to reach, the more you could charge for access. This model has been collapsing in stages for 500 years. Almost nobody tracks the pattern. The printing press did not just eliminate scribes, it fractured the oldest information gatekeeping system in European history. Before Gutenberg, the only way to access written knowledge was through a literate intermediary: a monk, a priest, a court scholar. The literate class controlled law, scripture, medicine, and astronomy. Within 2 generations of the press, books became affordable, literacy rates rose across Northern Europe, and the clerical monopoly on knowledge broke permanently. Not because priests became less intelligent, because the barrier to access disappeared. The same pattern hit travel agents in the late 1990s. Before Expedia launched in 1996, booking a flight required calling a professional who had access to airline reservation systems the public could not see. The agent's value was not expertise, it was access. When that access became a website, roughly 65% of travel agency jobs in the United States vanished within 15 years. Now watch the acceleration. Duolingo has reclassified its human content creators as content curators. Their job is no longer to produce material, it is to review what AI produces. The CEO stated publicly that headcount will only grow if a team cannot automate more of its work. JP Morgan's Coin program processes over 12,000 commercial loan agreements per year. Work previously performed by lawyers and paralegals, not assisted by AI, performed by AI. When access to information becomes free, the person paid to hold that access becomes a cost center. Not overnight. Structurally, permanently. If your value at work depends on knowing something your colleagues or clients do not, you are in the second zone. The question is not whether that knowledge will become publicly accessible. The question is whether it already has. We are only at the second skill, and the pattern is getting heavier. The next 2 zones are ones that professionals believe cannot possibly apply to them. People with degrees, titles, office doors, they are wrong. The third skill zone is the one that surprises people most: physical dexterity in controlled environments. Union leaders once called this skill untouchable. The human hand, they said, was too complex, too adaptive, too sensitive to replicate. For a long time, they were right. The hand is extraordinary in unpredictable environments, in a storm, on uneven ground, handling a material it has never touched before. But in a controlled setting, a factory floor, a warehouse aisle, a fulfillment center with fixed racks and standardized bins, the hand is not complex. It is a process. In 1811, in the textile districts of northern England, skilled handloom weavers began destroying machinery. History calls them Luddites and remembers them as fearful and wrong. The financial records tell a precise story. Before the power loom, A skilled weaver in Manchester earned between 15 and 25 shillings a week, a solid middle-class income. By 1820, mechanized looms had doubled output while halving labor costs. By 1830, that same skill paid starvation rates. By 1850, the profession was gone from England. The weavers understood what was happening. They were not afraid of machines, they were afraid of what would feed their children. 1 century later, the pattern scaled. Henry Ford introduced the moving assembly line in 1913. He broke skilled craftsmanship into repeatable motions that any worker could learn in a day. The artisans who once built carriage frames and hand-fitted engines were replaced by line workers performing one motion thousands of times per shift. Then, in the 1970s, the line workers were replaced by robotic arms. Japan led this transition. By 1985, Japanese automobile factories ran with one-third the workforce of their American counterparts and produced higher quality vehicles. Germany followed with what it called Industry 4.0, integrating robotics, sensors, and data into manufacturing at a national scale. Both countries made a policy choice to automate. Both saw factory employment decline permanently. A machine does not need to be smarter than your hands. It needs your hands to be predictable. In 2016, Foxconn replaced 60,000 workers in a single factory with automated systems. Not across a decade, in one facility. Amazon now operates fulfillment centers where robots handle the majority of sorting, packing, and routing. The company cut 16,000 jobs in early 2026, following 14,000 corporate reductions the previous year. CEO Andy Jassy stated that as the company deploys more generative AI, fewer people will be needed and headcount will shrink. If your workplace has a fixed layout, standardized inputs, and outputs measured by volume or accuracy, your physical skill is not protected by its complexity. It is defined by it. The fourth skill zone cuts directly into the professional class. Routine decision-making. Loan officers, insurance underwriters, hiring managers, compliance analysts, middle managers. Their value is the ability to evaluate a situation against criteria and reach a conclusion, approve or deny, hire or reject, escalate or close. They believe this requires human judgment. But the word that matters is routine. If the decision follows rules, even complex rules, even rules requiring years of training, it is not judgment, it is pattern execution. One of the earliest examples happened in 1956. Before the FICO score, every consumer loan in America required a human being to sit across a desk, review financial documents, and make a subjective call. It was slow, expensive, inconsistent, and biased. The FICO score did not improve that judgment, it replaced it. A complex human interaction became a three-digit number processed in seconds. Today, over 90% of U.S. consumer lending decisions begin with an algorithmic score. No human reviews it. The desk is still there in some branches. The human who sat behind it is not. The pattern expanded. Insurance underwriting moved to predictive models. Amazon built a hiring system that screened and rejected applicants without human review. When it replicated existing biases, the response was not to bring back human reviewers. It was to fix the algorithm. The human was not part of the correction. Salesforce reduced its customer support workforce from 9,000 to 5,000 by deploying AI agents, not chatbots. Agents that resolve problems and close tickets without a human in the loop. 4,000 roles cut in August 2025, another 1,000 in early 2026. CEO Mark Benioff attributed the reductions directly to AI. ING, one of Europe's largest banks, is cutting up to 950 positions in the Netherlands by the end of 2026. Large language models for documents, AI for compliance. In the United States, 66% of enterprises reported they had already reduced entry-level hiring because of AI. 21% stopped hiring for those roles entirely. Your skill set has an expiration date, and the company that trained you already knows when it is. If your workday involves evaluating situations and reaching conclusions that follow a pattern, you are in the fourth zone. The technology does not need to be smarter than you. It needs your decisions to be consistent. And if your decisions are consistent, they are already a data set. The technology doesn't eliminate work. It eliminates workers. Specifically, systematically by quarterly earnings target. The fifth, and the one nobody sees coming, is translation and formatting. This is the zone where people argue. People here believe they are creative. They believe their work involves interpretation, taste, originality. But the structural test is not whether the work feels creative. The test is whether the input determines the output. If the source material shapes the result more than the person transforming it, the skill is not creation, it is conversion. Telegraph operators were among the highest paid communications professionals in the 1880s. They spent years learning to encode text into Morse at high speed, decode incoming signals in real time, and verify accuracy across vast distances. The best could process 40 words per minute by ear. It felt nothing like a mechanical task to the people who did it. Then the telephone arrived. Bell's invention did not outperform telegraph operators. It eliminated the need for encoding entirely. The message no longer needed conversion. By 1900, telephone lines were spreading faster than telegraph infrastructure could be maintained. By 1920, the telegraph operator was a disappearing profession, not because the operators were less skilled, because the step they performed was no longer necessary. You do not get to keep a skill just because it is hard. You lose it when the step it performs becomes optional. DeepL, the translation service built in Germany, now produces output that professional linguists rate as comparable to human work for standard business and legal documents. Translation agencies have restructured around AI-first workflows. Humans review machine output rather than producing original translations. King, the company behind Candy Crush, laid off roughly 200 staff in 2025. Those roles were replaced by AI tools. HP announced between 4,000 and 6,000 job cuts tied to AI productivity initiatives, product development, operations, customer support. If someone could write a manual for what you do, if the input you receive largely determines the output you produce, you are in the fifth zone. But here is the inversion. Every single one of the 5 zones shares one trait. The skill can be documented as a process. Input, rules, output. That is the thread, not difficulty, not intelligence, not education level, describability. If the work can be written down step by step, it can be automated. Every time a company writes a training manual or a quality rubric, it is writing the specification for its own future automation. If someone could write a manual for your job, someone is already writing code for it. This is not a coincidence, it is structural. Every major technology shift in the last 250 years has begun in Zone 1 and worked outward. Not because the technology is smarter each time, because the number of jobs that can be described as processes keeps expanding. The vulnerability is describability, and describability is growing faster than at any point in history. According to McKinsey, current AI technologies could automate activities accounting for 57% of all U.S. work hours. In 2023, that estimate was 30%. It nearly doubled in 2 years, not because the economy changed overnight, because the tools for describing human work as a computable process improved faster than anyone forecasted. The World Economic Forum's 2025 Future of Jobs report projected 92 million jobs displaced globally by 2030. 41% of surveyed companies plan to reduce their workforce because of AI. In the United States, 66% of enterprises have already reduced entry-level hiring. Wall Street's largest banks estimate they will cut 200,000 roles in the next 3 to 5 years. Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, warned that AI could eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs within 5 years. Half. That is not a prediction from a critic. That is a projection from someone building it. And yet, every company on that list still publishes career pages, still runs recruitment campaigns, still calls its workforce its most valuable asset. The language has not changed. The math has. It is now April 2025. Marcus Webb is sitting at his kitchen table in Cleveland with a laptop open to a job board. 47 applications in 6 months. 3 interview invitations. In every one, the hiring manager asked about platforms Marcus has never trained on. AI tools he has never opened. Workflow systems he has never heard of. 19 years of flawless data processing, the best reviews in his department, and not one interviewer asked whether he was accurate. Not one asked whether he was reliable. He was not passed over because he lacked experience. He was passed over because the experience he had was in the wrong zone. Marcus was not betrayed by technology. He was not betrayed by his company. He was betrayed by a structural assumption he had carried since his first day on the job. The assumption that doing your job well was the same thing as having a future in it. It was not. It never was. The shift was always the plan. The only question was timing. The question is not whether your skill falls into one of the 5 zones. If you have watched this far, part of you already suspects the answer. The question is what you do with that knowledge before the next shift reaches your floor. Which of the 5 zones is your current job in? If you want to understand which skills survive and which do not, subscribe. The last shift never begins where people expect. Now you know where it starts.